Hello, dear friends. We are glad to welcome you again, and today we are going to talk to the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Igor Mikhailovich, the topic of our conversation is the following. The point is that humanity is going mad, and these are not just words, because unfortunately, the number of people in the world who experience mental and behavioral disorders is steadily increasing. And you know, if earlier they used to name some biological or socioeconomic reasons, nowadays experts are already sounding the alarm about the impact of climate change on people's mental health. Climate change is really a very serious challenge for the psyche of every person living on the planet. You know, one thing is when it is post-traumatic stress disorder after a person has faced a tragedy during extreme weather events. And another thing is how the behavior and psyche of people on the planet are affected by global climate change and the causes which actually trigger it. And, you know, literally recently, there was a conference in Stockholm which was held by the UN General Assembly. They also mentioned there that climate change is exacerbating an already difficult situation with the mental health of the planet's population. And, you know, it is officially stated that, as of today, there are about 1 billion people suffering from mental disorders. That's a lot. And this problem causes enormous damage and harm to the economies of different countries because the damage is estimated at trillions of dollars. Unfortunately, the prognoses are discouraging. They are getting bleaker and bleaker. And the damage caused by mental disorders is expected to be 16 trillion US dollars worldwide by 2030. Maybe for our viewers, this is just a number, but it's a huge amount of money. Because if we talk about and relate that at least to the annual GDP of the entire world for the year 2020, according to the World Bank, the global GDP was $85 trillion, while the damage from mental disorders is $16 trillion. That is an incredibly huge amount.
Actually, it will be much more. Why? Because this pathology will progress, so to say. The climate aggravates the situation, plus the economic crisis that we are all entering. It will be a very severe and very serious crisis. Tatiana and I talked and warned about this a few years ago. It will affect some countries not in a good way. And we precisely mentioned that people shouldn't invest their savings there for too long. Do you remember?
I do remember, of course.
So we have come to that time. Now it's going to start. And unfortunately, yes, next year won't be pleasant either. That's normal. It's just a crisis. But for people, these are tough times. Moreover, there is climate change. Plus, there are quite serious geopolitical perturbations, war. Emotions run high. It also affects the psyche, one top of the other. And plus inflation, due to the crisis. That's why the number will be enormous. It is far from the number they voiced.
But the scary thing is that every 8th person in the world faces mental disorders.
Not every 8th person, but many more. Because again, 1 billion is what is officially stated.
Right.
These are people who have sought help. Yet there are so many people who already suffer from mental disorders, but they don't seek help. Why? We all understand perfectly well. No one wants to go to a psychiatrist so that later on friends, acquaintances, relatives and everyone else would point fingers at them, right?
Yes, stereotypes in society are certainly like
This
that.
disease is so widespread nowadays, and so many people are seized by it. Let's look even at the top officials, who are supposed to be responsible, to whom we have entrusted our own power over us. I'm not talking about all of them, but in certain countries. People, it's true, look at them. Are they normal people?
After all, consciousness justifies that probably This kind of behavior, a bit of a deviant one, is sort of PR, perhaps that this is a way to attract attention, but in fact, I wouldn't really call the behavior of some people fully normal.
Absolutely right, but I'll put it as follows. Since people hold high positions, they must conform to them, while everything else is a sick psyche, which we are trying to justify with sort of charisma. Isn't it true?
It is.
And if there are already more than enough of such people there, can you imagine how many of them are among us? Not just imagine, take a close look. Observe yourselves. After all, as of today, many people can already hear voices, right?
Yes. Thank God some people treat it critically at least, and there are those who...
Thank God.
Yes.
But many people don't understand. And this aggravates their state so much. It causes fear, depression, and many other things, doesn't it? Whereas if a person invests his attention in a disease, what does he do? He buys...
Yes, he worsens it.
He buys a disease for himself. And it all gets worse. Every day there are more and more people. But again, the forecast is bad, unfortunately. As for the climate, so far we've only faced, just a bit. It only begins to progress. It's gaining momentum.
So we don't even know what the climate crisis is, and we cannot fully evaluate.
Of course we don't know. We are still quite far from it. We just, bend over to tie our shoelaces. We haven't even run yet, and we are far from the finish line.
I was very much impressed by the example you gave of a lid on a pot with the water in it, which is seriously simmering and boiling.
Right.
And when you realize what's going to happen to that lid during the intense boiling of water...
But the lid, excuse me, is... Exactly, and the lid on this pot with boiling water is nothing but the crust of our little planet. What will happen? That's what is going to happen. The situation is not very good. You have just mentioned mental disorders, right? And let's look at what's going on in the field of oncology nowadays. There are actually a lot of people who get sick, and it is rapidly gaining momentum. There is another problem that is also no less important. I don't even mention cardiovascular diseases. Let's talk about immunity, because there's a massive decline in immunity as of today. Yes, some people start attributing all this, to conspiracy theories and ideas, to COVID, vaccination and everything else. But what about those people who lose their immunity in the literal sense of the word? Who weren't sick with COVID, who were not vaccinated, and there are a lot of such people. Why is this progressing very much today? It's the climate. What affects our planet affects us as well, my friends. Unfortunately, the situation is not very good. I would raise a big question about it. As a whole, will we as humanity actually live to the point when the climate, so to say, manifests itself to the full extent?
That bad?
Well, let's simply take a look. We are slightly less than 8 billion. We can safely say that already over 2 billion, and quite far beyond 2 billion, are people with pronounced mental disorders. Many of them are irrevocably, unfortunately. A great many people have a decline in immunity, cancer, and a lot of other diseases that have begun to progress precisely because of the climate. Why does this happen? A simple question. Because not only is there a direct impact of what affects our planet, but there is also a weakening of the electromagnetic field. Well, it's not a secret, everyone knows this, it is written in many sources. Yet, what is a magnetic field for our body? Well, experiments have been conducted, friends. Those who are interested can see what this leads to, the famous experiments on mice, and so on. I'm not saying that people will behave like those mice, because in that famous experiment which was conducted
in the year 1960 something, even...
Yes, of the last century, so to say. It was conducted back in the past millennium. So the decline in immunity and the development of oncology were clearly and vividly shown there.
Very serious development of oncology.
Right.
It showed almost a 35% increase.
Aggression, pronounced aggression.
Violence, cannibalism.
Moreover, when there was enough food and everything else, we are not saying that people will behave like that, but they already behave that way. And this is only the beginning.
You know, Igor Mikhailovich, I very well remember a comment actually given by scientists within the framework of this study that the first people to feel this effect would be those with a low empathy level.
Right.
That they would be the first to be exposed to those aggressive outbursts, so to say, to this very violence, and that's scary. You know, in one of the videos, we talked about compassion and empathy, that consciousness was drawing a picture for people that the further it goes, the more of these cataclysms happen, and the more people die, then probably some kind of compassion will turn on. And he said, on the contrary, empathy will turn on.
Of course.
This is where you realize that precisely these people with inhibited empathy will not just fail to show compassion towards others, but they themselves will actually be the cause of many troubles, aggression, violence, and cannibalism. This is scary.
This is scary. In general, our topic today is not very nice. Well, friends, we should talk about that too. You know, so that you don't wear rose-colored glasses, so that you don't look at the world through a keyhole. You should have a broad view of the world. It is necessary, say, to study what science makes public. Of course, this is only partial information, sometimes far from reality, but at least it gives an understanding of what is going on. Why? We are human beings after all. Humanity is you and us, friends. And not to know simple elementary things, well, in any case, for many people, this is an answer to what is happening to you and why a lot of problems began. Why many people have sleep disorders, while others, on the contrary, feel drowsy. Also, just take a look, okay? Everything depends on the type of a person. There is a very distinct correlation. Some people lose sleep, while others become drowsy. Moreover, this happens in waves. If you notice,
Yes.
it even happens on certain days of the week. And everything will keep getting shorter and shorter, I mean those periods of time. In other words, those days when a person cannot sleep will become more and more frequent, while many people already have no sleep at all. This is all caused by these, let's put it culturally, climatic changes.
The picture is quite discouraging, Igor Mikhailovich, because...
What is there to be encouraged with? Elementary. Let's take the following marker, okay? As of today, what cause ranks first in the teenage mortality in the United States?
Well, previously those were traffic accidents, whereas now gunshots, gunshot wounds.
That's right. So what has caused young people's and teenagers' deaths from gunshot wounds to exceed deaths in traffic accidents in the last few years? After all, this is abnormal. And no matter how much they fight this, no matter what they do, people today are powerless to stop that. This is really scary, in fact. Now, let's look at this from a side. Mental diseases increase, empathy declines, aggression and anger are manifested. Now, a little question, my friends. Do you know how many guns people have in their possession? A simple question. Of all the guns existing in the world, 85% are in private hands in people's homes. 2% are in law enforcement agencies, and only 13% are owned by the military. Imagine the number of guns that are in people's hands. So as of today, if we take, okay, let's take official statistics. 1 billion, it is every 7th person. That's a person with a mental disorder. And most people have guns.
Scary. It's scary to live in such a world.
Well, this is just the beginning. I'm telling you, if we take all this and put it together, The situation is not very good. To be honest, I don't like it.
You know, Igor Mikhailovich, I was even surprised that, for example, those people, perhaps young guys who take a gun in their hands and go, I don't know, to shoot people in the street or shoot children at universities or schools and so on. Obviously, one immediately understands that there is something wrong with their psyche. But when, for these guys, their own fan clubs are created, when books and movies are dedicated to them, you can't help but wonder about the mental health of our society.
Whether it is healthy, right, whether our society as a whole is healthy. We say that there are 1 billion, 2 billion or more people with mental disorders. Actually, all of our society is sick. Isn't that so? Friends, if we take an honest look, are we healthy people? Why? Because, let's put it simply, fan clubs are created. But why are we silent? It means we are fine with that, aren't we? If we are not indignant, if we are not against this, well, the whole of humanity is silent.
Maybe people don't understand the danger of this, why and what it leads to in general.
What do you mean by what it leads
to? The fact
to?
that we are silent when this is promoted.
It leads to the fact that, again, in the United States alone, deaths from shootings among teenagers are at the top of the list. That's what it leads to, because people grab a firearm, and there will be more and more of such people who come and shoot school children. Again, it has nothing to do with climate. It directly relates to our attention. Why? Because this attracts our attention. Moreover, such people are promoted, they are shown on TV. Fan clubs are formed, they write books, and books are written about them. Movies are filmed about them. Will the number of such killers decrease or not? In fact, it will only increase.
Quick fame.
Of course, a simple example. A person dedicated his life to becoming a world-famous singer and so forth, while another man intercepts his fame by a single shot and instantly becomes famous around the world too, equaling him in terms of attracting attention. I emphasize in terms of attracting attention. It's simple.
Now you understand why in the creative society the name and actually the image of those people will not be popularized, who
commit serious crimes. Society should forget about them in general. They shouldn't exist for society at all. Don't forget about mirror neurons, my friends. A bad example is contagious, this is really so. Don't people know that? They do. What do they do that for and why do they do it? A simple question, is it beneficial to someone? Is someone doing it on purpose? No. It's just that we are extremely stupid, while Shaitan is so powerful that he easily manipulates the whole society. That's the answer.
You know, Igor Mikhailovich, you said you touched a little bit upon Islam, and indeed we talked about one sign of the Day of Judgment, that sudden deaths will occur. And incidentally, our participants, who are connected with medicine as well, say that this is really a very serious problem today, and doctors are baffled by the number of incidents that occur. So today they're already talking about introducing such a specialty as climate cardiology.
Yes.
Which will study the relationships between the climate and its influence on the cardiovascular system. And people understand that the reason for all this is actually the sudden arrhythmia that takes place.
Not always.
Not always.
Not always arrhythmia.
Well, at least people have a chance to save each other's lives in the first minutes.
In the first 2 or 3 minutes at best.
And at least some, I don't know, there are already suggestions to install various defibrillators and so forth in public places of cultural and mass gathering of people, meaning at least somehow...
Well, one should actually know how to use them, you see?
That's right.
Not only do they...
Many people don't know what it is needed for in general and how to...
That's what I mean.
Of course.
Not only do defibrillators need to be installed, but people also need to be trained how to use them. If this starts being done on a mass scale, believe me, the situation with this disease will gain even greater
scale.
Right, not just a greater scale, you know. Even now it's like, as we already discussed it with you, we can say that it's not a pandemic, but it is definitely an epidemic, because a lot of people die. Yet it will become a pandemic. If we start doing that and training people, why? Because we will all begin to think about it and be afraid of it. And where we invest our attention, what we invest our attention in is what we buy. Plus, there are causes. This is precisely conditioned by the climate. And in addition to the climate, we will invest our attention. Well, what will happen if we look sensibly? However, we shouldn't be silent either. Let's say the means of resuscitation should also be available. You know, as a bonus to all that we mentioned above, there will also be another problem, my friends. Not will be, but it's already there and it's already progressing. Just like everything else, it is the fear of darkness and of bright light. Meaning, people will feel bad in the sun, and they will feel bad in the dark too.
Is that related to something that will occur in the twilight hours or to some internal processes?
These are internal processes.
Purely internal ones.
From a purely mental perspective, people will feel extremely uncomfortable under bright light as well as in darkness. Fear will arise, well again will. This is already happening. And it is also happening massively. All of this will increase. And again, I've just mentioned bright light. It will be hard for people in the sun. Well, somehow, we cannot but mention the obvious. Nowadays, everyone is already noticing that. When we mentioned that it would take place, they looked at us somehow, well, basically as always. But now they can see for themselves that being in the sun, especially in summer under the bright sun, well, it's not the same as always.
The sun is very aggressive.
And many people know that it burns severely.
Yes, there are allergies and the sun is very aggressive.
It's aggressive. It's very aggressive indeed. And this is noted. Why is it so? Because there are problems with the atmosphere, friends. Many people ask a question, what's wrong with the sun? Why is this happening? We could explain that, and we again return to the Allat physics.
Allat physics.
Yes.
Well, the answer is exhaustive. The Allat physics explains all these processes perfectly well, Igor Mikhailovich.
It explains a lot,
really
right.
A lot.
Well, for those who are familiar with the Allat physics, I will answer simply. The reason is that, let's say earlier, quite recently, with the photon flux, coming from the sun, the Earth received more photons 4 and fewer photons 3. Now the entire situation has changed. I understand that for the rest of people, photon 3 and photon 4 are another reason to laugh.
Yet we probably cannot tell about the functions of photon 3 and photon 4.
You know, on the one hand,
that explains a lot.
I don't want to give them another reason to laugh at us. But on the other hand, taking into account how much mental disorders and everything else are progressing as of today...
That's inevitable.
That's inevitable.
Yes.
So laugh, friends. If you have fun so far. If you knew what we know, you would have less and less reasons to laugh, and more reasons to cry and to grieve.
Igor Mikhailovich, you know, our today's conversation reveals one more point. One of the signs of the judgment hour was called madness and turmoil. And you know, the prophet said that the hour will not come until the turmoil spreads. People asked him, what is that? And he said, those are murders. They said, we already fight against pagans anyway. And he said, no, this is totally different. The thing is that the time will come when people will start killing each other. They will start killing their neighbors, their cousins and relatives. And the prophet was asked, are we even going to be sane? And he said, when that happens, people of that time will mostly be deprived of sanity. Only now I understand the entire severity of the problem and what the Prophet Muhammad was talking about. And you know, he also mentioned another sign of the judgment hour, that the hour will not come until there is a time when a murderer would not know why he has committed the murder, and the victim would not know why he has been killed. And both of them, unfortunately,
will go to hell.
Will end up in hell.
That's true.
Our today's conversation is a perfect demonstration of the true causes of what is happening, and that they somehow go back, let's say, again to the root cause, to what is going on with global climate change. We again come to the causes which basically provoke that, to cyclicity and so on.
Of course. No matter how they rejected this cyclicity, they have started talking about it now. We repeatedly struggled and told people about it, and they have admitted it. Again, let's recall how quite recently we were ridiculed and what kind of aggression arose when we spoke out against carbon dioxide. When we said that, pardon me, refusing hydrocarbons and nuclear power is stupid, taking into account all the changing, moreover impetuously changing, climatic and economic conditions and everything else. After all, this is our world. Excuse me, friends, you know, it's like an egg. It is so integrated and concentrated that a little hole is enough and everything will change. Everything will disappear, life will disappear. So that hole is now manifesting, and our lives are really at risk. But we don't understand this in fact. We continue dividing something, we continue doing God knows what. As for politics, it is actually impossible to watch it without tears nowadays. It feels like they have resided in a very reduced electromagnetic field for a very long time. Isn't that so?
Yes, with low density.
Yes.
That's true.
This is really...
Ingrid Mikhailovich, you also said that there were a lot of people who slung mud for payment, and how much money was spent on actually slinging mud at those
Well, isn't that
who
so?
said that CO2 is not the cause.
We really said it was all going to happen, but now they themselves talk about that.
That's actually beyond ridiculous.
This is, well, no, we are used to this. Believe me, friends. Those who know it themselves. You also had a hard time more than once from those sponsored rhapsodes, simply from idiots, from people who don't see beyond their own bellies, egoists. Whereas now this already affects everyone. Now, I'm just saying only, you know, people who are so oppressed, so brainwashed by the media that they cannot see anything beyond their own noses. Only those people do not know what is really happening in the world, how severe the problems with the climate and everything else are. Now we have brought it up too, because everything we say has actually been voiced. Isn't it true? It is.
It's just that, you know, the truth is so harsh. And you've said it right today that it's a very hard subject.
It's hard to tell the truth.
It's hard to talk about this. Consciousness wants to talk about something good to avoid this somehow. And you realize that...
I pity people, to be honest.
Right.
I just pity people. I really understand we are voicing it, but...
One should just have big courage, of course, in order to accept this truth and see it. Because consciousness certainly hides. It wants to talk about good things.
People are always punished for this truth.
Yes.
And it is always laughed at. And it is interesting that when they lie to you, you stand up and applaud and vote for them, for those liars. Whoever lies to you more, you support him more. But when people tell the truth, you don't perceive them, do you?
Prophet Muhammad said that there would come a time when the words of a liar would be perceived as truth, and vice versa, when people who tell the truth would be accused of lying, and that people would actually trust not those who tell the truth, but exactly liars.
That's why he was the prophet. That's why he is the greatest of people.
Ingrid Mikhailovich,
That's right.
all of us basically understand perfectly well what prospects await our society in this regard. Yet, there is the following question: is there still a way out?
We voiced it more than once. But if you look at this sensibly, in reality, it is either to confront the climate. We said there are two options.
Stabilization.
Yes, in order to stabilize and stop it all, we should build a civilization anyway. The only question is whether we will build a civilization as inferior or superior beings. In other words, whether we will have a single world government or actually the creative society. There is no other way. Whereas the alternative to that, friends, is Allatra. I'm sorry, I'm saying it straight. Allatra.
Either the creative society or Allatra.
Or Allatra.
Either stabilization of what is happening to our planet.
Or think about yourselves. And I'll put it as follows, it won't hurt. Right? It is necessary to hope for the creative society and to build it. That's our real chance, and we can change a lot. we can indeed stop, let's say, within a short period of time, what is now escalating. We will be able to stop and end it. Humanity does have such an opportunity. It's difficult to unite. It's difficult, to break through this armor of morality. There is no other way to call it. There are obvious facts. All of us are between the hammer and the anvil. All of us, the entire humanity. It is sort of logical that we have to search for a way out. While we begin, in order not to think about what will happen, we begin to destroy each other already now. That's a good way out, isn't it?
We don't even need to be reduced, unfortunately.
Will we live long enough? That's the question. Due to all of the aforesaid, there are great doubts that we will be able to live up to those times, right? Therefore, friends, Allat should not be postponed until later either. Go ahead and practice. I understand that it's hard. As of today, consciousness really dominates people. Shaitan is strong, but it's not that difficult to gain life. It is easy if you strive for it, and it is very pleasant. It's the best thing that can happen to a person. Well, let's say, at any rate, you should at least attain peace. You cannot imagine what the state of subpersonality is. I don't want to frighten you. We've been frightening you throughout the conversation. Well, I don't like today's conversation. It is tough. Yet we cannot but speak about this either. That would be unfair on our part. To know, to understand, to see and to be silent is stupid. It's not human. We must know what's going on. We must know what will happen. We must prepare for it. We should also take care and prepare for what is inevitable. Preparation won't hurt. If you don't have time or desire, if you cannot overcome your shaitan and gain life, my friend, attain peace at least. Take care of a future personality and think about yourself. Although life is much better. Believe me, friends, it is much better than just sleeping. But sleep is much better than suffering. It is far better. Everything is simple. There is nothing complicated. After all, loving is pleasant. Living is really pleasant. But I pity people so much. And we can really do a lot, my friends. But for that, let's remember that we are people. Let's not forget about that. Let's remember that life is given not in order to just go crazy and kill each other, not so that we, like those mice in the experiment, would feed on each other's flesh, but so that we love each other, so that we build a much better world, so that we gain life. And for that, we need love. Let's begin with a simple thing. My friends, let's just begin with loving one another. We apologize for today's conversation, but it is also necessary. Thank you for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Igor Mikhailovich, for shedding light, the light of truth, on the subject that is present in society today. And thank you for shedding light and, in the end, giving an idea on how to find a way out of this entire situation.
You know, Tatiana, if we told the truth, the whole truth as it is, there would have been more sadness. Today we have voiced only what is in the public domain, but it is also very sad. I'm not saying that we know a lot more and that everything is much more frightening. Take it easy and do not listen to your consciousness on this note. What we are now saying is that there is a problem, and we as people, as humanity, can still solve it if we want to. So, we wish you all the best, friends. Thank you.